I'm here today with Bruce Evans, who's joining us for the MOUG 40th Oral History interview. Bruce, thank you for joining us today. I was wondering if you could start out with telling us your current position, including title and place.
Yes, I am the Assistant Director of Library Collection Services at Baylor University. And basically what that means are to manage and supervise everyone in the cataloging and metadata unit within Library Collection Services. And also I have responsibilities to originally catalog music and AV items.
Oh, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the same position or is this a different position from your time you first began your involvement with MOUG?
This is actually a different position when I first began involvement in MOUG. When I attended my first MOUG meeting back in 2000, I was the music catalog librarian at Southern Methodist University in Dallas.
Now, what has been your MOUG activities and involvement during your tenure at MOUG?
I have had many different involvements with MOUG over the years. So as with many folks, my first involvement in MOUG was to become a member of the program committee, which I did for the very first time at the 2001 meeting. And I served under the continuing education coordinator at the time was Margaret Corby. And after that, I served again in 2002, 2003, 2005, and 2006 annual meetings for those meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I've also served on the nominating committee 3 different times, once as the chair of the group and also twice as the board representative. And then speaking of the board, my very first position on the MOUG board was as continuing education coordinator, which I will refer to as CEC from now on, which I held from 2006 until 2010. And the reason I was able to serve on it twice was because no one else wanted to run for the office in the 2007 election. So since I was the only candidate, well, there you go. And so as many former CECs know, this is a very labor-intensive role, as the CEC is responsible for collaborating with the program committee in putting together its MOUG annual program every year. Excuse me, and also for collaborating with the MLA convention managers and other key MLA folks with hotel and program logistics, and since we share the conference location with MLA every year. And I believe we also transitioned to utilizing MLA's online registration page to house MOUG registration during this time, which is worked out very well, and also gave me the privilege of working with AR Edition's Jim Zahovich. But something I absolutely need to recognize during my time serving as CEC, especially the first year, was the incredible tutelage and mentorship I received from Neil Hughes, who was the MOUG chair at the time, and he also previously served as the CEC a while back. So without his guidance and mentorship, I wouldn't have made it. So I need to recognize and express my appreciation to him for mentoring me during that time. So my second position on the board was as vice chair, chair, and past chair, which I served from March 2013 until March of 2017. And during my time as vice chair, I also served as the chair of the Web Visioning Task Force, which was charged for recommending a vision for a reworked website in time for the February 2014 board meeting. And also during my time during this service, some of the things that happened were the Financial Planning Working Group, which resulted in the chair, also chaired by Neil Hughes and featuring other past chairs on the group, which also led to the creation of the first 100K capital campaign to support the Ralph Pakian Travel Grant, and also during this time we created the new Reference Discovery and Collection Coordinator, which was formerly the Reference the Reference Collection Services Coordinator, and also created the Reference and Discovery Collections Committee to go along with that. And a couple other highlights from that time is we also, after following the Web Visioning Task Force, we also had the Web Implementation Task Force, which put together the plan for migrating to a new web hosting service. And then lastly, towards the end, we also migrated MOUG-L from the hosting at University of Kentucky to OCLC. And then at the very end of my time as chair, and just before becoming past chair, I had the privilege and distinct honor of presenting the Distinguished Service Award to Neil Hughes, which meant a lot to me because, since, as I mentioned earlier, was really a major mentor to me and had become a really good friend. So that was a great fitting end to my time as chair.
All right. What drew you to MOUG originally?
So my familiarity with MOUG went all the way back to my library school days at University of North Texas. So back then I worked as a student worker in the UNT Music Library, which means I got to work with folks such as Mark McKnight, Morris Martin, Donna Arnold, Ralph Hartsock, Gene Harden, and also Susanna Cleveland, who was she was a student worker at the time in the music library as well. And then one of my memories from that time was that Ralph introduced me to the resource called The Best of MOUG, which many of you know is a collection of music-related uniform titles. And so because of that, this piqued my curiosity of the organization MOUG. A few years later, when I received my first permanent full-time position at Southern Methodist University, I of course sought to become involved in the greater music library profession. And my very first national MLA conference was at the 1998 meeting in Boston. And back then I was interested in attending MOUG, but back then MOUG was all day on Wednesday, and which meant it was at the same time as the MLA tours. So I know this is shameful, but I went ahead and forewent attending MOUG because I really wanted to go on those tours. So I also skipped in 1999 because who in their right mind would give up the opportunity to get an all-day tour of the then brand new Getty Center? So that was quite an experience. But yes, unfortunately that kept me from MOUG that year. And so I finally attended my very first MOUG meeting at the 2000 meeting in Louisville, Kentucky, and so that was a really great experience, and I was very glad to finally be able to do that.
What changes have you seen in MOUG over the years?
So the changes I've seen in MOUG over the years fall into two broad categories. One with respect to MOUG's annual meeting, and then also its administrative structure and operations. For the annual meeting, when I first began attending MOUG meetings back in 2000, in the early 2000s, a large percentage of the sessions were in the form of workshops, and of course most of them were cataloging related, but also with respect to MOUG's dual mission of cataloging and public services. There were many for both of those kind of as interests as well. But what happened? What I also remember is that a lot of those meetings were breakout sessions, and so you had a lot of meetings that were scheduled at the same time, and so, for better or worse, folks had varying opinions about that. So later, I should mention that over time the breakout session model was abandoned, and all the content happened or in succession, so nobody had to miss out on any meetings. So I think that for me that was a good development. So then you wouldn't have to miss out on something you really wanted to see. And the second half of the 2000s, a higher percentage of the sessions themselves were more about developments in the profession that were, of course, of interest to MOUG. And then also during this time, we instituted the practice of sponsoring joint pre-conferences with MLA, which I think has been mutually beneficial to both organizations. And one particular that really sticks out to me in recent times was the LCMPT and LCGFT pre-conference that we held actually as a part of MOUG's program. And I think this was really successful and laid the groundwork for our current practice of having our meetings all day Tuesday and Wednesday morning. So I think a big shout out needs to go to past CEC chair Michelle Hahn for organizing that and making that work so well. And then in terms of administrative changes, there have been some notable changes in that regard as well. The first one that comes to mind happened during my first year as CEC when then Chair Neil Hughes put out a white paper advocating for the separation of MOUG's budget into both operational and conference budgets. So I think that was later adopted, and I think has really contributed to the solid financial foundation that MOUG finds itself in. And during the end of my time as CEC, we reworked the treasurer position to be to follow a 4-year treasurer-elect, treasurer, and past treasurer model, which I think has also worked out really well, and it was done because the duties of the treasurer had become really complex over the years. So those were and as previously mentioned, we made the changes with the RDC coordinator and committees, as I had talked about earlier. So those were the major changes I've seen administratively in MOUG during my time in the organization.
Oh, thank you. Now, you've admitted that you skipped the first 2 MOUGs of your tenure, but from your attendance from your first one, moving forward, what is your favorite MOUG memory?
So this was a really difficult question to answer because there are just so many different ones to choose from. So, well, of course, I would love to fill a whole journal with all of my memories from MOUG, fond memories from MOUG. There's no time for that. So, I will pick some that of different types. In terms of the annual meeting, I had mentioned the LCMPT and LCGFT joint conference or joint session, pre-conference session that we had as a part of MOUG. And I think what really stuck out to me was that just it was just superlative, both from a content and the fact that there were so many attendees and the way that it was just put all together, masterfully put together by Michelle Hahn at the time. And I think for me personally, I would say that serving on the board was a major mountaintop experience for me. And just, everybody is familiar with the level of friendliness and incredible talent in our organization. I would say that was really exemplified by everyone I served with on the board. And something I really especially enjoyed as a part of that, were our summer board meetings in Columbus, Ohio, where we would all stay together at the same bed and breakfast in a historic neighborhood in Columbus called Victorian Village, and then we would walk over to Jay Weitz's and his wife's Esther's house, where they would host us to where we would have the all-day meeting, which was really nice. So 2 specific annual meeting experiences for my board service that stand out are of course, like I mentioned earlier, getting to present Neil Hughes, the DSA, and then back in 2007, the experience of getting to meet so many different people and a variety of new people as a result of hosting my first MOUG meeting as the CEC back then. So that was all very meaningful, and I hope to those listening that all of these experiences have enticed you to seek out service on the board. It's really a wonderful experience and one that I'll treasure for quite a long time.
Bruce, thank you very much for sitting down with us today and sharing your experiences with MOUG.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thanks for agreeing to interview me, and I would like to thank MOUG for inviting me to speak. I consider this an incredible honor to be invited to interview to help celebrate MOUG's 40th anniversary and the organization I dearly love. So thank you.